All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you well know, every week we try to give you the goings on in the past week in pop culture with our weekly podcast known as This Week in Pop Culture, giving you the rundown of the past week so that way you are not kept in the wind. And of course, I'm not going to be alone in talking about these said topics. So without further ado, I want to welcome my co-host onto the show, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What is going on, sir?
That says, we a game out of second place, ladies and gentlemen. They try to throw dirt on your boy. They try to say he was dead. Said we only could win with Anthony Davis, but somehow the team got better. But I'm living the good life. How you doing today, B?
I'm doing good, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Spills, because I have some news to talk about myself with the Warriors, but we'll get to that. But as you can see in the title, you'll know that we will be commenting on, of course, Hollywood's biggest night with the Oscars happening later on this evening. But before we get into that, we did have a couple of other stories. We actually have a jam-packed show. We had a lot of stuff going on, not just with sports, but also across streaming, and we do also have an additional story in that film and TV arena before we dive into our picks for the Oscars. So without further ado, Spills, shall we begin?
Let's get it.
All right, let's get it. So we're gonna start first and talking about. I guess we'll start on some somber news as there were some passings that did happen this week. So let me bring that up. Of course, we had a couple of actors as well as a gentleman behind the scenes who passed away. That being talking about Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. Michelle Trachtenberg, and of course Roberto Orci. But we'll start first with Gene and his wife. We'll bring that up first, and this was news that dropped on Wednesday. I'm talking about Hackman and his wife. And as I said, very, very, very sad news dropped this past Wednesday regarding Hackman and wife Betsy Arakawa and their dog who had been found deceased in their Santa Fe home on Wednesday. 95-year-old Hackman and 64-year-old Arakawa were discovered in separate parts of their property.
Bring Daddy his AirPods. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello,
In
hello.
this
I think
filmography.
we I think we lost Brandon. Did we lose Brandon? Are you here, Brandon?
Yes, yes, I am. Are you not
Okay,
able to
I,
hear
I
me?
lost your volume for a second. Sorry about that, ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen.
no worries. So I'll repeat that. Well, I guess what I was asking was, what are your thoughts on the respective passing of Hackman and his wife? And what would you say, secondly, is your favorite Hackman film?
Okay, yeah, obviously, condolences to Gene Hackman and his family and his wife and her family. The situation seems kind of torrid.
Yeah, it's really
Uh,
weird.
it's a weird situation. I hope it's not akin to a Romeo and Juliet situation, but the way I've read it, it seems like that. So, you know, hopefully everything was okay. Just going on Gene Hackman. Obviously, my favorite Gene Hackman portrayal was Luthor, Lex Luthor. I feel like nobody has captured like the brilliance but also futility of Lex Luthor.
Yes,
I think that because he was a much older man when he played Luther than most of the people that's played Luther recently. Most of the Luthers now are guys in their 30s. I think because Gene Hackman was a guy in his 50s or 60s, he had interacted with people who would be on the level of a Luthor much more, and had a personal relationship, and also had saw them through their lives to understand that these rich guys are no less flawed than any of us. Just because they got a lot of money don't mean that they're not flawed, and they're not also, they could be super brains. Like, that's another thing that I think that he really captured about Lex Luthor, is that he was super smart, but he's not super smart because he's trying to fight an alien every day. Like, why are you trying to fight an alien, Lex Luthor? He's a super powered alien that can fly in space. Why do you think you could best him? That just doesn't make sense. So the idea that his portrayal of Lex Luthor was great. Obviously, the French Connection, that's another great one. I love that one.
Yes.
Um, he's got lots of other ones. But I just can remember his grisly voice. He was such a staple of our childhoods that it's just really sad to see him go. What about you?
Well, I'll say first is, it is, as you said, very strange the circumstances of their passing. I know it's still an ongoing process, so I know you gave your thoughts on it. I will emphasize that it's it's still ongoing a process in terms of the details that are shared on it. I know as of right now there was a lot of speculation of there being like monoxide poisoning or something along those lines that played a part in him and his wife's passing. But I know that has since, from what I understand, been debunked in terms of it being uh, uh likely not the cause. So if that's not the cause, because that would be a logical cause in the way that they describe that situation, what exactly is it? So it'll be interesting to see what other details come out about this. And speaking about Hackman himself, well, first let me comment because I don't think enough is being talked about his wife. For those of you that are not aware, she's an accomplished musician and has periodically, throughout her, time, even prior to meeting Hackman, had stints in which she had, performed, and was recognized in terms of her talents in that way. And I also understand that she was a business owner as well. But if memory serves, I want to say that happened post marriage to Hackman. But and speaking about Hackman himself, I'll second exactly what you said in talking about the fact that, you know, legendary actor among generations of among, a generation of actors, and even among his peers, a lot of his peers who are they themselves considered terrific performers hold him in such high regard. So that really says something. And when we're talking about projects, of course, I'll be remiss in not talking about Superman, as much as you guys know out there that we love our superhero films. Um, and I will agree. I can't remember exactly at what decade of his life he had played. I'm brain farting on it right now. What decade of his life he played Lex Luthor? I do agree with you that it did happen later.
Quick
I think
math. He was in
we're
his 50s. He was in his 50s because he was
okay.
96. He was 93 when he died last week, and
Yeah.
Superman came out like 77. So that's
Okay.
50 years ago. That's
Okay.
quick
Okay.
math.
So there you
Ha
go. There
ha,
you
ladies
go.
and gentlemen, did you see that? Boom.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Like right on the spot there. But as you said, I think that held the difference between his interpretation of Lex Luthor and other iterations that we've seen. Because as you said, a lot of the other iterations that we've had have been actors, and it's no slight against them because a lot of them are accomplished, actors in their right in terms of what they've accomplished thus far in their career, but I feel like because they are playing it at a younger age, those characters come off far more whiny than you want Luthor to be. Lex Luthor, despite the fact that he is a mortal man. Um, his mind and his intellect allows him to be on par with someone who has the physical, advantages that Superman has, and it's always interesting in how they collide and how he's able to devise ways in order to challenge someone who on paper would seem far more superior to him. So that friction and that conflict between them is always been fascinating. but yeah, I would say Superman. I know you touched on French Connection, but I also say The Firm. When we're talking about, I think you just went out again,
Oh,
Spills.
sorry, that's a
Okay.
classic. I just,
Oh,
try to
okay.
make sure we don't have too much
Gotcha.
background noise, ladies and gentlemen.
Got it. Got it.
You
Got
know,
it. But
it's
I
a
would say
live
the
show. It's a live
yes,
show.
yes. But I would say The Firm too. I'll never forget that. I also had an opportunity in passing to meet Hackman. I can't say I met him directly, but I was in his presence when they did the Will Smith film. For those of you that this is a deep cut, for those of you who may not
Oh yeah,
remember this
Enemy of
film,
the
Enemy of the
State.
State.
That's a
So,
banger.
Enemy of the State, for those of you that are not aware, was shot around DC, around DuPont Circle and Georgetown, and so they were on hand there at that time when they were shooting that film, and be paying my dues as a youngster, playing a background actor. It was during one of those sequences. I want to say one of those sequences that they have, there in DC. So, in speaking to that, again, shout out to Hackman and his wife Arakawa for their passing, and hopefully we're able to get more specific news and more clear cut news of what had transpired. But in talking about our next said uh, as next said you know individual who had deceased, we have, as I mentioned at the top, Michelle Trachtenberg. Many of those of you out there who may recognize or remember her from Harriet the Spy, or even Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She was found in her apartment, and I believe this was also on Wednesday. But yes, she was found in her apartment this past week. She, unfortunately had deceased at the age of 39. Spillman, your thoughts on the passing of Michelle Trachtenberg?
This one hits home because the boy is 39. So me and Shelly
You said
Shell
the
over
boy.
here, the boy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that? Brandon is Kendrick Lamar. He said, "The boy, I want to see the man because it looks like a man. It's supposed to be a man in front of me." But I digress, ladies and gentlemen. But Michelle Trachtenberg, she's my age. It's terrible to see her pass away. I feel like this may be, as we get more information about it, someone who passed that was a casualty of being such a young star. You know, she was in movies from the time she was like 11 or so until she was like 28, 29, and then they kicked her out of the studio, maybe even a little earlier. They might have kicked her out 25, 26. And I can imagine how to be up that high and to fall that far and to be led back into obscurity had to have contributed some things to the lifestyle. So
Well,
very sad to
I'll
see her
say
going.
this in terms of what you said. She has been in other things post Buffy. And in doing digging up some research, from what I understand, there had been, and I mean, there's no confirmation of this because there's still details being shared as we speak. But apparently, she had a liver transplant that had recently occurred, and so there's speculation that that played a role in terms of the complications of that transplant, played a role in her passing. I know that right now, just like in the situation with Hackman and his wife, the details are still ongoing. It could be something else, but I know that right now that's what's being speculated. But to your point, in talking about her filmography, whether it's on the small screen or on the big screen, man, I can think of a multitude of projects. I can think of, just as I mentioned, Harriet the Spy, growing up as a youngster and seeing that film. Whether I'm talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I have a very
Adventures of Pete and Pete.
conflicted relationship with her character on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because initially, as it was the case with many fans out there, I wasn't a huge fan of her character when they first introduced her because of the nature of her. I feel like just being a MacGuffin. And I know for those of you that don't know the show, that may not make sense, but those who do know the show, you know what I'm talking about. Where it just felt like she was just there to be a MacGuffin, to be something in terms of what her character represented, or what you find out, her what her character is, what's revealed about her character. It just seemed like that's the only it felt very one dimensional in terms of what she was there for. And as the series progressed, and as we moved away from that story arc with her character, I felt like she became that character was provided an opportunity to become more well-rounded. So I ended up appreciating that character a lot more. But even in talking about other films, I think a lot of people forget about a Euro Trip, the comedy Euro Trip. You know,
Classic.
I enjoy,
As a
enjoy that
as a
film.
sister, as a brother with a sister, that's a very awkward scene where it's like, oh.
Again, unfortunate, to have her pass away at 39. That's basically the age, our age, right around.
Yeah,
So,
the man, not
crazy.
the boy, ladies and gentlemen. You see that? Yeah,
But
Shrek kid.
crazy to again to have her pass away. So condolences to her family and friends. Unfortunate, at that age, and hopefully we get more details on the specifics of what was the cause of death there. And then lastly, out of the three that we had in terms of our legacies remembered of passings that we had this week, of course we have Roberto Orci. I'm gonna bring him up here. And in terms of his body of work, I think people kind of sleep on the influence and the impact that he had in his career as a writer and as a producer, not just on a small screen, but also on the big screen. Um, of course, with when we're talking about the big screen, Star Trek and Transformers come to mind immediately in terms of uh, his uh, um, his impact on the film industry as a in terms of what he's done as a writer and as a producer. But Spills, I'll punt it over to you. What are your thoughts on the passing of Roberto Orsi?
I think that a lot of his work is very unsung. Obviously, as a writer, we don't know him. The layperson wouldn't know him, but he's got some great works. Obviously, Xena the Warrior Princess and The Legend of Hercules. Those are great.
Of course,
Um,
yeah,
he was a writer on the new Star Trek, which was a banger. He was a writer on the
yeah,
first two Transformers. I think Mission Impossible 3 was a banger. He's got a lot of stuff. Although he's got some stinkers. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which killed the franchise, but I feel like that is a little bit on him, but also a little bit on the fact that Marvel was going to buy them, and everybody was just kind of waiting, because at that point that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, we were all like, why is Sony still doing these? We want to see him with Robert Downey. So that's understandable. Hard to see him go. A great writer, and established great works.
yeah. I
Um,
agree. I was going to say, in talking further about what you were mentioning, uh, Xena, Warrior Princess, Hercules, those two shows, grew up on those shows, right? Many of the shows that we enjoy today, we would not have if it were not for those two shows. A lot of people, may sleep on the fact of the amount of talent that have come out of those shows, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera, and how we might not have had other future projects that we've enjoyed, whether it's been other sword and sandal projects like Hercules and Xena, or just superhero films in general. You would not have. I mean, you had Sam Raimi, who came up during that time in making those shows, and of course he went on to do the his trilogy of Spider-Man films. Um, and we're talking about Lucy Lawless, right? I mean, we had Spartacus. People sleep on Spartacus. Spartacus is an awesome show that is no longer out now, and I believe they are doing in the process of doing a new series. But at least as it stands right now in the moment, there isn't a current series. But when that show was going, man, that show was a banger. And you had Xena, Lucy Lawless, pop back up there. Not the character Xena, but the actress. And then we've had, when we're talking about the franchises, I consider myself more of a casual Star Trek fan, and I feel like they did, however way you may feel about the first sequel and the sequels that followed it, at least that first initial reboot of Star Trek that we had, I felt it did a pretty commendable job in terms of not only providing a film that hardcore Trekkies were able to appreciate, but it also had enough there where even if you weren't a hardcore Trekkie, you would still be able to get pulled into the story and enjoy the elements of that said film in terms of them setting up that franchise. And I feel the same way with Transformers 2. That first film, however way you may feel about any of the other sequels that followed, is a film that even now I still enjoy seeing. And I even remember when it first came out in theaters that I had seen it. I went to go see it multiple times because I mean there is something to be said about having seen those characters, those robots that we've seen in the animated form, be fully realized in live action. And then on top of that too, it was an entertaining film. As I said, however way you may feel conflicted, you may feel about any of the sequels that followed, I feel like you can deny that that first Transformers film was awesome. So again, condolences to family and friends of those folks in which we had just mentioned that passed this week: Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, Michelle Trachtenberg, and lastly, Roberto Orci. So that's going to do it for what we have with our legacies remembered. We're going to switch gears over to sports with
Oh,
what
just
we
a quick
had.
shout out also.
Yes.
Shout out to Angie Stone who passed away recently, just
Oh,
a couple
yes.
of days
Yes. Thank
ago.
you. Thank you. Yeah,
We
that
we
just
we
happened
missed
recently.
her. It just happened like the other day. She was coming up
Yes.
here to this area actually for the CIAA tournament. But shout out to her family. A great neo soul artist. We all been in a coffee shop or a poetry slam of some sort and heard some of her music. So shout outs to her as well.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks, Spillman. Yes, that did happen over this week, but it just fell short as we were putting together the notes and details for this show, so we weren't able to fit it in there. But I'm glad you brought it up. But switching gears over to sports, to our sports cooler segment, we did have a couple of stories to discuss. Of course, we had that revenge game, or I'll put up quotation marks revenge game. I'll explain why I have quotation marks there because I have my reasonings. But revenge game for Luka Doncic against his former team, the Mavs. The crazy 12 threes that Steph Curry hit in his game against the Magic this past week, and a new chapter in the world of Master P, in the world of basketball. So we're going to talk first about Luka Doncic. As I mentioned, this past week, he played his former team, the Mavs. And if you aren't up to speed about why this was such a important game, is when we're talking about the trade deadline that happened last month, that hit his deadline last month. This was one of the shocking moments of the season in which Luka Doncic had been traded to the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis. And so, the moment that happened, people were marking on their calendars. Okay, when is that game going to happen? Where Luka Doncic is going to be able to take out his feelings about being, moved away from the franchise that he thought he would retire with. And it happened this past Tuesday, on Tuesday night. While he didn't have an out of this world performance in his revenge game, he still had an impressive game by normal standards. When talking about someone who's not a superstar, he recorded a triple double, scoring 19 points, getting 15 rebounds and 12 assists. Spills, what are your thoughts on Luka's first encounter against his former team?
I will say, like you said, quote unquote revenge game. They didn't have all their players. They didn't have all their tall
Thank you.
guys,
Thank you.
all
Yep.
those forwards that, I said wasn't good enough to win a championship last June. I said it. I said it was good enough to beat all them slow-footed tall guys in Minnesota, but they're not good enough to win a championship. So we ran them because one game out of second place right there. You see that, ladies and gentlemen. But I just want to remind you that, obviously Luka's a top five player. They were trying to shop him. I've heard news that allegedly they were trying to get Luka traded for about a month before he actually got traded. So, I know we all talked about how someone didn't know that they were getting traded, but everybody knew. Everybody knew that they knew they was going to trade that boy.
Mm.
Um, you know, uh, love AD. It's sad that he got hurt, but he got hurt. That's part of the reason why he got traded. He was always getting hurt, and he couldn't let LeBron be a second option. He didn't take the reins like he truly needed to. He just needed to take the reins as a younger star to LeBron. But I guess you know, Luka's a top three player. AD's never really been a top three player in the NBA, so there's a difference in that level. So I don't know. I think it was a great game. Again, we a game out of second place, so we go the wins keep on winning. So we'll see. I mean, this is good for regular season basketball, but I wonder how it would work in the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see.
Indeed, indeed, and I'm glad you brought it up. Then that was exactly the reason why I had it marked as a quote unquote revenge game. While it was nice to be able to see that visual of him wearing a Lakers jersey and playing against the Mavs, because it's something that you never thought you would see. Um, it still, I don't feel, is a realistic representation of all the storylines that are at play, right? So I mean, we have Luka Doncic on one end, who is supposedly have been traded because he wasn't really committed to his how can I explain this? He wasn't committed to his fitness, where they were saying that he was too fat and that he wasn't like dedicating himself to being in shape. And then on the other end, you have uh, and I'll let off of it this time. I know I always call them street clothes, but can't deny that AD is a talented player among his peers in the league right now. The only issue with that nickname, based on that nickname, is his durability. And I mean, it's crazy. Right on cue. Even though he was having a terrific game in that first game back with the Mavs, he ended up getting himself injured, and now here we are. That he is not playing with the Mavs, and hopefully, I believe right now that things are looking good. That he will at least be able to make it back this season, by the time they reach the postseason. But still, like I'm sure it's frustrating on his end to have uh, uh, that idea of you placed on you, and feeling like you're kind of proving that criticism right by actually getting injured in that first game back. But I feel like, in the same way that we're talking about Luka Doncic and what he has to prove as a Laker, the same can be said about AD too, where he has to, have an incredible game against the Lakers to not only demonstrate to the Lakers what they lost, but to also demonstrate to the Mavs of what they gained. I think right now it seems kind of weird to think of the trajectory, or the possibilities with the Mavs. But if they can get all of that front court, healthy, they're going to be a force to reckon with any West team. Whether we're talking about,
I would
the
agree with that. I
the
would agree with
Nuggets,
that.
whether we're talking about, because with the Nuggets, they match up with the size with the Nuggets. Whether we're talking about the athleticism of the what is it of the Grizzlies, the Grizzlies, as athletic as they are, they're not going to try to hop in there with all those trees in there when they're all healthy like that. I'm a little skeptical that they'll be willing to do
I
that.
don't know. They got the big
Ja's
boy.
kind of crazy. He'll try.
Ja's crazy, but they
Ja's
got a
crazy. He'll
big boy.
try,
They
but I'm just
got.
saying that's one
I feel
player
like
out of the whole team.
you
I feel
forgetting
like
about
that
the big
size will
boy.
be discouraging enough for most teams that can't match that size to try to go inside. And so if you're living and dying by the J and you're not, hitting any of those shots, they're going to be a really difficult team to beat. So
I
in
believe
talking
so.
about that, that's going to be difficult for the Cavs because yeah, they have some size, but to the degree of the Mavs, not really. If they're fully healthy, same with the Celtics. As deep as the Celtics are, I feel like the Celtics are deeper on their wings than they are with their front court. I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like when they have everything running, they are really deep when we're talking about those wing players. And the only team that I could foresee could still give them trouble because they are two-way players with many of the players that they have on that team, and you know where I'm going with this, would be the Thunder. That'd be about it. But
Yeah,
um,
maybe I can see that, but I don't feel like I feel like adding Anthony Davis to the Mavs, but losing Luka is a push. I feel like in the way that they would have had more trouble. Like if they could have kept Luka and got Anthony Davis, I think that would be definitely better than the Celtics right now is currently constituted. I think I agree with you on the Cavs. Those guys have proven themselves. So, until they actually do something, I'll believe it when I see it. Like,
yeah,
that's how I
yeah,
feel.
yeah.
Um, Memphis, I think Memphis has that ace of spades with the big boy Edie. I feel like we've seen him in the regular season doing his thing, but those guys for the Mavs are big, but they ain't seven
But
foot
he's
four,
young though.
two
He's
ninety.
young
That's
though.
a
That's the thing. He's still
but it
young
don't
though.
matter. It don't matter. And he's got enough gravity. I feel like they wouldn't need him to do anything as far as like we need you to be getting in plays and stuff. But just having that big body in the mix, two of those guys got to guard him. And I feel like in today's NBA, we really don't have like other than Jokic, we don't have somebody who be in the playoffs really moving bodies and needing like, oh, we got to put a scheme against them. And I think with someone like him or with Porzingis, even they had fits last year with Porzingis. Sure, AD changes some of that, but there's less wing players for the Mavs now. So they got Christie. Christie's great, but Christie's not a 25 a night scorer for a whole playoff series. You're not gonna get that from him. He might have a night, but between Derek White, the two Jays, and Holiday, any guard in the NBA is pretty much cooked. And then,
Yeah, I hear you.
you
I
say
hear
that
you.
they're not as athletic with the Celtics, but I feel like their wings can also score 30. So sure, they're doing the dirty work stuff. You got Jason Tatum doing that, but he's
But
going to get those buckets.
can we also agree though that as difficult of a matchup that the Celtics can be in terms of their wings, we've seen times when they struggle when those shots are not falling, that they struggle when they're not shooting from outside, regardless of how deep their wings are. And regardless of the fact that they can play on both sides, we've seen it with the Thunder where the Thunder not only are two-way players, they can play defense and play offense, but we've also seen them in games this season and in a couple of games this season being able to handle adversity even when things are not falling, they still figure out ways to win. I feel like we've seen that often with the Thunder, and not to say that the Celtics haven't accomplished it, but we've seen it a lot this year with the Thunder. So, but one extra detail that I do want to drop there because I did say that Doncic didn't really have a monster game by his standards. I will say this, and in terms
He
of
messed around, got a triple double, ladies and
he got a
gentlemen.
triple double in his sleep. But I'll also say this: it was his first triple double with the Lakers, and with that triple double, that causes him to join Westbrook and James as the only player in NBA history that recorded triple double against all 30 teams. So just put
Crazy.
that into context. He just turned because he turned 26 this week, if memory serves. Or
Crazy.
what? Yeah. So
We
Still
don't
has a ways to
retool, we
go.
reload, baby. I shouldn't have did that on the screen because we'll get monetized. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's going on. Whole lot of gang
But
stuff going on.
switching over to our next story in sports with the sports cooler segment. As I mentioned, Master P has entered a new chapter outside of music. It was announced this Thursday or this past Thursday that he would be the president of basketball operations for the University of New Orleans Privateers. The New Orleans native who faces, I was going to say, as a New Orleans native, he faces an uphill climb with this trouble program. However, he promised in the conference that they had that he plans to bring back a winning culture to the New Orleans basketball program, and to also try to rectify what the controversy that has happened unfortunately with this franchise prior to his arrival. So Spillman, your thoughts on Master P's new role? Okay, we lost you there for a second. We'll give him a moment to come back in a moment. But I guess what I'll say is this: a lot of people probably aren't aware of the the I guess you can say, I suppose you can say legacy with Master P when it comes to basketball. For those of you that are not aware, even back in that time when he was um, uh, really pursuing music, before he had done that, he actually was a accomplished, basketball star, coming up in his time, in his own right. And in that time, during that time in which he was being mostly recognized for his musical talents, he actually did play for the NBA preseason and with the summer league with a couple of franchises. A lot of people may not be aware of that. So he's not nothing to you know look past in terms of the sport of basketball. So, he has some experience and has some pedigree when it comes to basketball. For those of you that may not be aware, but Spillman, I want to punt it over to you. What are your thoughts on Master P's new chapter here as the president of basketball operations for New Orleans?
I think that's a good look. I think that P, as they say, who this? This ain't no P. Let me hear you say Um, quietly as it's kept, just as Brandon was saying, ladies and gentlemen, Master P is the greatest rapper to play basketball ever in the history of rappers playing basketball. I don't want to hear
Yeah,
you say J. Cole. I don't want to hear anything about any of them other rappers that be having four of their friends just speeding the ball so we can see them make clips of jump shots that we only see the one jump shot that they make. I'm not talking about those guys. P was
right.
scoring on NBA players and NBA level talent. So also, he's got a great connection with a lot of the Southern California basketball community. So I feel like of the celebrities that get these kind of looks, I think that Master P is one of the most deserving. Obviously, he did a lot with the USC Trojans and DeMar DeRozan and all of those boys. So to me, I feel like this is a good look. Somebody who has cachet with their name to getting people in positions where they can be more successful. That's ultimately the name of the game. In these kind of situations, I
Indeed.
think he also has the level of pedigree to know who's actually good. Because, like, a lot of, like, quiet as it's kept, a lot of people look at numbers and they don't look at who's actually good. Because, you can be the best player on the worst on a bad team. That don't mean that you actually good. And you have to
And
be
you
able to
can be
look to see.
or you can be a terrific player in a horrible conference, and then
Yeah,
you really get shown for who you are when you actually getting played against those elite players in those elite conferences. So
for sure. So, arguably he was affiliated one of the, I give him a top 10 shooting guard, maybe DeMar DeRozan, top 10 to top 15, somewhere in there. DeRozan somewhere in there. He went to conference finals every year. Sure, he lost to the GOAT, That's what happens sometimes. They're all foils. They're all foils in life. He unfortunately kept running up against the GOAT. But I think Master P's got a great eye for basketball, and he's a lifer. So to me, I feel like this is a great thing for New Orleans, especially with all of the shadiness going on with the current state of the franchise. They just traded away one of their best players. We don't know what they're going to do with Zion. They're kind of down in the
Well, I'm saying just for that
standings.
that college program, forget
Yeah.
forget the NBA franchise. Just with that college program, some of the things that they had been, in the midst of. If you, I mean, you can share, but I'll pull it up on what it was. I think one what had to deal with brain farting on what it is right now. I want to say it was gambling. When it came to that team. Um, but yeah, they had where it actually resulted in suspensions for some of the folks that were a part of that program. Let's see, because I want to make sure that I'm being accurate with this. If memory served on what had transpired there, but yeah, I would say this as I'm pulling this up is you can't go wrong with someone who is a native, of your of that place because that's a a plus to be able to have someone who to say that they were born and raised there. That's a cool optics of having someone that was born and raised there. In terms of his business acumen, of being able to have that background of what he's accomplished in music and to be able to translate, that same business acumen with no limit to, perhaps what he does as the president of basketball operations. And just as I just mentioned before, which you just touched on again, is he's not someone who's never played, basketball. He is someone who has had that basketball background and is had some exposure at different levels of being successful playing basketball, whether it was being a high school star, whether it was uh, um, playing in the preseason, with a couple of franchises. So here it is. I'll pull it up. So it says there was an ongoing investigation at the school for possible NCAA violations related to, yes, sports gambling, which resulted in the suspension of 4 players in late January. So that was literally a couple of months ago that had transpired. But yeah, in terms of his pedigree of what he has done, I wish him all the best. We'll see what happens, but I mean, you can't really do worse. I feel like with all the things that we talked about in terms of the business end, in terms of the pedigree, in terms of being from the area, that all of them seem like all of them are pluses to me. We'll see how it actually works out, but at least on paper for right now, again, wish him the best and looking forward to what he's able to do to help reshape that program. So getting into the last of what we had with Sports Cooler, as I mentioned at the top, yeah, I'm going to get into this one.
Let's hear it, ladies and
We were
gentlemen.
talking about monster iconic games. Of course, we had Mr. Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time. I don't care what anybody says. Even
Oh
Spielman
no, that's
cannot
a hands
deny.
down. I won't ever fix my lips to say something stupid like that. Definitely one
Okay,
of
greatest
definitely
shooter of
the
all
greatest shooter
time.
of all time of all time.
But yeah, so as I mentioned at the top, what I teased at the top is that he played against the Orlando Magic this past week on Thursday night to be exact, and he scored 56 points in the game, and within that 56 points that he scored, he made 12 threes. And let me just put that into context, folks. When we're talking about these 12 threes, Curry has scored 9 plus 3 pointers in NBA history 45 times. This game is the 45th time that he has scored 9 plus threes. To give you a context of how crazy that is, We have two other players that are still active players, by the way, that are so far beyond, so far below that 45 tally. You have Damian Lillard, who has scored 14 three-pointers, or say 14 on 14 occasions. He has scored 9 plus threes, and then just under Damian Lillard, which gives you also puts in the context of how impressive it was that you had two of these players on the same team. Steph Curry's former teammate, Klay Thompson, has accomplished 9 plus threes in a game only 12 times. So put that in the context that the number one person to score 9 plus threes is 30, has done it 31 times more than the next person on the list. Spillman, I will give you the floor. Let me see.
I appreciate that this is your team and you met this. You set up these topics because personally, I would go with the team that's higher in the standings. But we gotta
Hey,
we
we
gotta
still in
throw
the playoff
bones.
race. We're
Yeah,
what, seventh?
I mean, yeah, for sure. And it's kind of close. It's bunched up.
And it's closing.
I
It's
I
closing.
like to see what y'all are doing. Y'all are doing good things. I
It's
will give you that,
closing.
Brandon. I'm not gonna be
One
a
loss.
supreme hater.
One loss since that trade.
I mean, trades go
I think
well
y'all
for
had
teams
two
that are good.
losses. Y'all had two
Maybe
losses.
something
We
like
had
that.
one.
Sure. Two
Y'all
losses.
doing okay though. Y'all doing all right. Y'all doing all right though.
But I will say, obviously getting Jimmy Butler has helped y'all tremendously. I feel like I doubt it. We
I'll
said it.
agree
I
with
said it
that.
on this show.
I
I
will
said it
agree
on
with
this
that.
show. I was like, I don't know if Jimmy is what y'all need right now. But
I
really,
said it. I was skeptical.
y'all got Jimmy at the right time. Like Jimmy is the kind of person you need to make a push. He can he's got ADHD. He can be focused. You can get him to focus, but only for a little bit of time. He can't focus for a whole year because he's going to start getting crazy this time next year. He's going to get crazy this time next year
Yeah,
and
we'll
blow it
see
all
how
up.
long. I'll give you that. We'll see how long this honeymoon phase lasts.
But
Because
y'all
I
already
know
gave him the money. Y'all already gave him the money. So I feel like because y'all gave him money, y'all gave him Clay's money, but that's not my business. That's not my business. Y'all gave him Clay's money. Clearly he's better than Clay. Clearly he's better than Clay. Obviously not
I
as good
don't
as
know.
shooter. No,
Now
he's
he
better than
is.
Clay.
Right now
He's
he is.
always been better than Clay.
No.
Clay ain't
Now
never
he
take no
is.
team. Clay never took a team to the finals by himself. Jimmy Butler has. So I feel what you're saying, but Clay also has
Prior
never
to the
been the
injury,
focus.
prior to his injury,
Clay
he
wasn't
was
better
right
than him
there.
prior to the injury, bro. I feel like Clay is one of them guys that was lucky to play with a bunch of good guys, so we think of him better than he actually is.
But I'm sorry,
Maybe
you
I'm
can't deny the fact, and I just gave this stat. He's third on the list, even if it is slower, a great
he
deal
played
lower
with
than
Steph
Steph.
Curry though. He played with
Nine
Steph
plus
Curry.
threes, 12 times.
He played with Steph. It's easy to hit a bunch of threes when the greatest shooter of all time is sitting across from you. It's like Chris
It ain't.
Carter had a when Randy Moss got with Chris Carter, all of a sudden he was back good again. Then when Randy Moss left, Chris got old all of a sudden. Chris ain't get old. He was just playing with Randy
I
Moss.
disagree with that. I disagree with that. We'll agree to disagree because before the injury, Klay Thomas was a two-way player. A lot of people sleep on that. He wasn't just an offensive player. He was placed on
It's easy to
the
be a
the
two-way
word.
player when they don't count on you to score all the time. Like Clay is a great bonus. I'm not saying Clay's not a great, but we not like Clay is a top 10 shooting guard of all time. Not shooting guard, but a guard that shoots. He's not a top 10 arguably shooting guard of all time. And I think that Jimmy Butler is a top 10 shooting guard of all time. We've seen him go to two finals by himself essentially. We've never seen Clay do that, especially that
But
year that
let's.
Steph was hurt.
I get what you're saying, but please let's not try to deny the fact that they also had a Tyler Hero on that team. Can we please try to act like he was the only person that was helping them get there?
He was the only
Hero.
person that was helping him get there.
Nah, bro. Nah, bro.
Tyler
He
Hero
he
is
he
good.
was he was a he was an architect, key
That ain't
architect,
no all
but they
star.
needed some of those players. They needed Hero there.
I'm about to say something very disrespectful, ladies and gentlemen.
And they needed Bam.
Tyler Hero is closer to Klay Thompson than Klay Thompson is to
Whoa,
Jimmy Butler.
blasphemy. Blasphemy. We're gonna
I
have to move
said
on for
it,
that.
ladies and gentlemen.
Blasphemy. We're gonna have to move on from that, bro. You lost me
I
on
said
that
it.
one. You
I
lost
wish
me on
that
that one.
Ray was in here or
Yeah,
somebody so that they could
you
see.
definitely
That's
lost me
right.
on that one.
Tyler Hero is closer to Klay Thompson than Klay Thompson
Wow,
is to
the
Jimmy Butler.
blasphemy.
They
The
couldn't even be in the same
blasphemy.
gym.
The blasphemy, folks. But
That's
on that
right.
note, I'm gonna have to move on to our next story because I can't even fathom the blasphemy there. And the last but
That
not
ain't
least story,
blasphemy.
the last but not least story we're going to talk about is the health of Gregg Popovich, who many of you guys know who follow basketball as the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. This past Thursday, he met with the team. They announced that he would not be returning to coaching this season. The iconic coach has been away from his post as coach since suffering a stroke prior to the Spurs matchup against the T Wolves back in November. Spillman, do you believe that Popovich will ultimately attempt a return, um, or do you believe that this is it and we won't see him um, at his as I said his most recognized post there as the Spurs head coach?
I think that it's been a good career for him as far as coaching. Maybe he will return as a consultant or maybe a general manager type guy because he's good at picking players. I think that he's good at that, but I think that
Developing players, yeah,
the day-to-day head coaching, his body can't hold up to that. Unfortunately, we don't really think of it like this, but traveling for NBA season is a young man's game. The old
and
guys
he's
don't generally do that.
76. He's
Yeah, that's
76. Few years off from 80, folks. He's
yeah,
76.
that's not something. It'd be different. I think he'd still be a head coach if he was like a football coach, where even though that's a very high stress job,
Your
it's
fewer
only
games.
so many weeks out of the year
Yeah,
that you would have to be doing that stuff. So
yeah,
it's a little bit easier to get yourself up to be in that travel and do that thing. It's only like 8 travel games a year, or
yeah.
9 or 12 if you do really well. 12 if you do really well. But I
Hey,
just think
Sylvia.
that
Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead, Spills.
what's up? Welcome to the podcast. We got some balloons there for you, friend. But yeah, I just think that you know, he's been a rival to my Lakers for a very long time. So
Yes, he
finally, the
has.
last of that Spurs dynasty is gone. They had all been thorns in my sides for many years. Anytime I thought that we was gonna get something going, here come all them international boys shooting off the wrong foot, being all elusive, and then Tim Duncan not saying nothing and just hitting jumper after jumper, blocking shot after shot.
He's been in the thorn of your goat too. Let's not forget that twice.
I mean, Tim Duncan has a GOAT argument. Tim Duncan has
Twice
a GOAT argument
with two
that
different
people
teams.
people don't like to say how Tim Duncan is close to being a GOAT. I don't mind saying it because the man never lost when it was like not a lockout season, less than never won less than 50 games. To me, that's the sign of a true winner. He always won 50 games. We've been alive here for 39 years, and we've never seen the Wizards win 50 games. Tim Duncan did it every year. So we've never seen it. You're thinking about it. You're thinking about it. It's never happened. It's never happened.
I have to check that one because
I
I'm
promise
thinking
you.
I'm thinking of no, because the only reason why I say that is because I'm thinking of there was that weird season, and remember, you can let me know if you remember this, where I'll never forget it. This was when we had like Larry Hughes, we
They
had
ain't win 50 games.
Karan Butler, and I want to say that we were like in a weird year, we were like first in the Eastern Conference. Like the Wizards were number one in the Eastern Conference. It was like in the middle of the season or the top third of the season.
I was going to say
Obviously, it
that
didn't
sounds like
last.
December. That sounds like they may have been in first place in December, but they did not continue. And they did not win 50 games because they haven't won 50 games since like the 70s. It's a thing. Look it
Yeah.
up. It's a terrible franchise. That's why neither of us root for that team
I
because
mean,
they're
it's not my squad anyway,
they're
so
consistently boo-boo. They're consistently terrible. Caca, as they say. But that's a tangent. But you know, obviously a great coach. You know, the really the inventor of the small ball lineup, where you get a decent big and then the rest is just shooters and stuff. He figured out the pace and space movement before anybody else did. That team with Kawhi and them that went to all those conference championships, and he almost beat y'all with just Kawhi when Tim Duncan retired. He almost beat y'all. If you didn't have that big Georgian dude come out there, step on his leg, and break his knee up, ladies and gentlemen, they was cheating. Shaja Pachulia, they put the goon out there because y'all was losing. He was beating y'all single-handedly. You remember that, ladies and gentlemen? You see how he's shaking his head? See, the Spurs was what? Hey, at least we never stooped. The Lakers never stooped to hurting people. We beat you straight up.
Well, be that as it may, again,
Okay, hold on.
terrific coach. Yep. Again, terrific coach, iconic coach with the Spurs through, many iterations of the Spurs and the lineups that they had. Um, if this is it, it has been it has been an honor to be able to see his career thus far and what he's accomplished in his career thus far. I am rooting for
Question:
him to be able. Yep, I am
where do
rooting
you
for
put
him
him
to
in the
be able
pantheon?
to. What happened? I'm sorry.
And coaches all time, where do you put Greg Popovich?
Ooh,
Is he over Kerr? Because Kerr got four of them, right? Kerr got four.
right now, I have him over Kerr. Right now, as it stands right now, I do have him over Kerr.
Because I
Um,
mean, y'all all running his offense a little bit.
and I'm about to say, and also I can't disregard the fact that Kerr played under Popovich too.
Yeah,
So he is a student, of Popovich. However way you want to, spin that or interpret that. So yeah, as it stands right now, he is above Kerr, but I do believe when it's all said and done, Kerr will eventually, be perceived as being, above him. You may disagree with me, but I do believe when
I
it's all
think
said and
I
done,
can see that. I can see
when it's
Kerr
all
being
right
above
now as
him.
it stands though, today he is he his body of work is more impressive than Kerr's. But I do believe when it's all said and done, Kerr will surpass him.
I think so too, but I do think that with the like I said, that 50 game that winning 50 games every year thing, it was no up and down. It was like every year there was a top three seed in the West, basically every year since 1999 until 2020, like 14 or so, which is a
Yeah,
crazy long run. So,
yeah, yeah.
obviously Steve Popovich, one of the goats, and also I feel like he got more out of less. Like I feel like he was shopping out of that bargain bin. He was like, "Ooh," he was Marshall shopping. Like that's how
Yeah, I
like he
mean, I
was
will
like,
give you that. When we're talking about that player development and players that, on paper, most didn't really see anything, amounting out of them, but he was able to develop them into viable, effective, stars in the league. Whether we're talking about Ginobili, whether we're talking about even Leonard himself, you know,
especially him,
I don't
because
think
they
anyone anticipated Leonard would be outside of the durability, part. In terms of just pure skill, I don't think anyone, perceived him to be as good or to get as good as he has been, in the games that he has been able to play. So,
for sure.
um, but that is going to wrap it up for what we have with our sports cooler talk. We're going to switch gears to talking streaming in our section known as Stream and Chill. Stream and Chill, folks. So, in talking about Stream and Chill, we did have a couple of matters to discuss, whether we're talking about a casting addition to the world of Dexter, to their sequel series known as Dexter Resurrection, whether we're talking about the Lanterns, the new series coming out of DC Studios, as well as some news regarding Warner Brothers Discovery overall, and the increase of their subs that they have received by the close of 2024. But we'll start first, as I mentioned, in talking about Dexter, and talking about the casting edition that they had. So let me bring that up now. So over this week, there was news on Thursday, to be exact. It was revealed that actress Krysten Ritter, and this is an exclusive out of Deadline, actress Krysten Ritter will be joining the series in a guest star capacity. Of course, you guys recognize Krysten Ritter from the Marvel series known as Jessica Jones, among other series as well. But in terms of this guest starring capacity with the Dexter sequel series, Resurrection, it is said in this story out of Deadline that her guest starring arc will see her portray a character known as Mia Lapierre. Apologize if I'm butchering it, but the character will be a renowned sommelier or a wine steward who may be hiding a terrible secret. And in the article, it is quoted as a serial killer secret. So, Spillman, what are your thoughts on Ritter joining the world of Dexter?
I'm excited about this. I think that Ritter is one of the greats. I like her work. She's always very grounded. She's really good as um kind of moral foil in Breaking Bad. I feel like this
Yeah,
is
yeah. In terms
how
of
she
playing
got this
like
part.
kind of twisted, dark characters. Yeah.
I feel like because of the character she played in Breaking Bad, and obviously the way that they used her in that plot, where it was like, are you going to go this way? Or are you going to go this way? I feel like they're going to use her very similarly in this, and she was so great at it. It felt like she, in that season of Breaking Bad that she was in, she was really leaning into what was going to happen with Jesse Pinkman. So that was very interesting in that series. She's got great range. I really like her work a lot. I think this is a really good move for them.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't
Cool.
really have anything bad to say about her.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I'll say this in talking about Dexter. Dexter, I feel, is in at one time it was in a very, for me, a very conflicted place because as much as I enjoyed the original series, um, I felt kind of mixed when it came to the New Blood miniseries. And for those of you that haven't been caught up to that, the New Blood miniseries that took place dealt with his relationship, Dexter Morgan being his that character's relationship with his son, who reunites with him. There were parts of that series that I enjoyed, but there were other parts of it that I felt like didn't really hold up to the original, which was unfortunate because the whole point I feel of why they did that miniseries is to kind of get the bad taste out of people's mouths or fans' mouths when it comes to how the original series ended. Because overall, there have been terrific seasons of the original Dexter. However, as we started to get into the tail ends of those seasons, I felt like it started to fall off, much in the same way another show I felt fell off that dealt with zombies. But I will move on. Um, but be that as it may, the reason why I said Dexter initially was in a mixed place for me is because now I feel like it's in a great place because we just recently had the prequel series known as Dexter Original Sin. And if you guys have not seen that, I highly recommend it. If you guys are fans of the original show, it gives you um, some insight into the characters when they were younger. And normally I'm kind of skeptical when it comes to prequels, but I feel like they did a decent job of recapturing the original show while also adding some new elements of why characters developed in the way or became the way they are based on what they were able to plant the seeds for in the show. Right now, because the show is already wrapped up, I know that there are talks of possibly doing a season two. For me, I don't feel like they need a season two. I feel like they set up enough there where you can seamlessly go from that prequel series right into season one of Dexter. So hopefully they kind of rest on the fact that they were successfully able to do this first season and leave it at that. I kind of hope, as much as I enjoyed the first season, I don't feel like there is a need, based on where they wrap things up at the end of this prequel series, to continue on. Now, with that said, I am interested to see what they do with Ritter, because the way that they explain it, if anyone, anyone out there that are fans of Dexter, that a lot of times, just like you would normally have on a series of this type, you have the big bad of the season, right? But you also have the weekly bad. From what they are describing for this character, it seems like this character is going to kind of be one of those featured villains that are like the villain of the week, or maybe the villain of a couple of weeks, versus being the overall big bad. There are a lot of impressive folks that are a part of this first season of the sequel series. Like, we didn't even get into the fact that Uma Thurman is going to be a part of this show. So uh, I have a feeling that she'll probably just be kind of like the villain of the week, which is fine, because I mean, she has more commitments of doing things with Marvel as it stands right now. So it allows her to kind of dip her toes into doing other things without taking away from her other commitments. So, and when we're talking about Ritter, as you said, I enjoy the things that she has done. So I feel like it can only be a plus in terms of having her be a part of the show. Any additional thoughts, Spills, before we dive into the other casting related story that we have here?
Nope, I'm interested in it, and it looks good. So let's move on to this next one.
All right, cool. So the next one that I wanted to dive into deals with the series that I mentioned earlier, that being the Lanterns. And I'm gonna bring it up here. Of course, the Lanterns is going to be an adaptation of the Green Lantern comics out of DC Comics, and it's going to fall within this new rebooted universe that's being done by DC Studios, which of course is led by Peter Safran and former, MCU director James Gunn. But this week we were given our first look of this DC Studio production, which will see the journey that's embarked by Hal Jordan, played by Cal Chandler, who you see here, who's a former test pilot and experienced Green Lantern, and his protege, John Stewart, played by Aaron Pierre, also seen here. So, Spills, does this first look photo get you excited for what the series has to offer?
Yeah, I actually think this looks good. Aaron Pierre doesn't need those CGI eyeballs that you see a lot of times with shows like these. They went out and got them a real live green-eyed Jonathan Stewart, which will be good. That's something that was very prominent in his depictions in media. So that I think that'll be good. I'm happy that they used him instead of somebody like Tyrese, because Tyrese would have looked crazy with some colored contacts in his eyes. I just want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, I know that was a thing that they pushed out there many years ago. But to imagine, can you imagine baby boy? I feel like that's what we missed out. We missed out on having Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan, and then having Tyrese as, as John Stewart. So that would have been amazing. I feel like we missed out on that, but I like these two guys in the way that they've cast them. I feel like um I forget what the other gentleman's name is, but he
Cal
seems like
Chandler.
Hal Chandler, who is Hal Jordan. He seems like he's got the kind of salt and pepper thing. He seemed like he used to be a fighter pilot. Like you could believe that he used to be a fighter pilot. Now he's training um Aaron Pierre as the new John Stewart to be a Green Lantern here. So I'm really excited about that. I also excited they probably gonna do a heel turn in the show if the show is successful. So seeing him become the heel will be awesome too. So I don't know. I think that would be very cool, and I enjoy what they're doing with this.
For sure, for sure. I guess for me, at least for right now, I'll be interested to see what becomes of this series, because as it stands right now, we have had other live action shows, but technically this would be the first one of the first live action depictions that we have of the DC universe, outside of, of course, the Superman movie that's coming out this summer. You can't really count Peacemaker, even though Peacemaker will continue in this universe. It was still technically, that first season was a part of the Snyderverse. Technically, it wasn't officially made canon until later, after they decided to reboot everything, that they were going to reboot it, or to say include it into this new universe that Gunn and Safran are doing. So what they've done thus far with the DC universe under DC Studios has been pretty good. I did enjoy Creature Commandos, but again, it was animated and it wasn't live action. So I want to see how they're able to interpret their live action universe, and it'll be interesting, I should say, to see how that happens in the format of doing a different storytelling format than what you would have in film. I know that most people out there would say, yeah, well, I mean, technically they already had another televised show in the form of the Penguin. Yes and no. Yes, it is a DC related production, but when we're talking about the overall shared universe, it's considered a pocket universe outside of what they are trying to do in this connected universe that they're doing, that they started with Creature Commandos. So I am fascinated to see how this all plays out. But in terms of the players involved, whether we're talking about behind the camera or in front of it, it looks promising. But I'm waiting to see some actual live action footage versus just making an assumption off of a photo. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it, but we will see. All right, so we're going to switch gears within this section of stream and chill, and talk about some business related news, which I feel like is a great segue from talking about lanterns, and that deals with Warner Brothers Discovery. And let me put that up for you guys now. So there was a news that was shared by the CEO, who you see here, when we're talking about Warner Brothers Discovery. CEO David Zaslav reported on Thursday that his company ended 2024 with 116.9 million global streaming subscribers, figures which include subs for Max, which is, of course, that streaming arm that you have for HBO, and also the streaming platform known as Discovery Plus. As a result of this user growth, along with Max's availability that people can get in bundles in terms of them paying for the service, the company's DTC revenue, and DTC basically stands for direct to consumer revenue, turned a profit of 677 million by the end of 2024, compared to the 103 million that it was able to make by the end of 2023. Spills, what are your thoughts on this report by the CEO?
They got money, man. The question is how they going to use it. This is the question always, because Warner Brothers,
Always.
they've had more money than God since we've been alive. Like,
Outside of maybe Disney
outside of maybe Disney, but
and
the Disney had to
Amazon.
catch up to them. They had to catch up to them. Disney
Yeah.
didn't have more money than them for the most part. I think that they have made moves now that are putting them up there. But I just feel like this is great. Discovery and Warner Brothers, great, big time money. I feel like this is a child of the streaming wars. You know,
Yeah,
Discovery ate HBO, and they kind of had to eat Warner Brothers after this, or merge with Warner Brothers, because that it's only so long that you've been kicking money back to Warner Brothers for all those HBO properties every year before you get involved with, hey, why don't we just set up shop together as friends? So yeah, I feel like the streaming wars are here. They've got the subscriptions, but how do you keep them? We all are disconnected from a lot of these streaming platforms because we be paying for them and we don't be using them. So
yeah.
how do they use that huge library that they've got over there to keep people over there? I feel like keeping eyeballs on your platforms and users logged in is the name of the game right now, and how they going to do that will be very interesting to me.
Indeed, indeed, I agree. I was gonna say when we're talking about this, and that's what I'm saying. And I'm glad that I brought up the segue of this being a segue after talking about the lanterns. I feel like you can't deny how having a lot of I feel like there are a combination of factors, right? I feel like there was momentum that was built during the pandemic when we're talking about a lot of the of what was produced during this time. You have a lot of shows that are are shows that came about prior to them deciding to do the streaming platform that um, has helped in their case in terms of being able to get eyeballs on their streaming platform. I mean, you have the Game of Thrones universe that's come back strong with what you have with the prequel shows with what is it House of the Dragon. You have the DC shows, whether we're talking about Peacemaker, whether we're talking about Penguin, which we just discussed, that are critically acclaimed shows that people, not only enjoy, but critics have enjoyed. You still have the prospect of other shows that are, coming down the pike. And then you have that endless library, when you're talking about Warner Brothers of shows that are at your disposal. So even if they're shows or content that you've never seen, that you didn't have a chance to see when it was on another platform, is now in one place. So I feel like all of those play things have helped play a role into being able to do that. And then just like they said with the bundling piece, there are uh, um, platforms and tools available now where you can get Max by default, or you can get it paired with other things that you're buying. So, like, give me an example for cricket, and I'm not trying to sell cricket, but for the cricket mobile service, you get a Max account by being a cricket, by being a cricket customer. Like just by being a cricket customer, you get a Max account, which is crazy. So, and then that's not the only instance in which you're able to get access to Max as well. That's just one instance. So they have found creative ways to be able to pair their service with other things to get people to buy the service, and to see the value in it. But in the same regard, there's a lot within that library that people are able to enjoy, that is from older things within within that library when we're talking about HBO, but also newer things too. Because I mean, there are even some TV series that you can pull up on there that are way back in the day, 90s shows where like I'm like, oh wow, this is on Max. This is what's up. So yeah, yeah. I mean, kudos to them for finding creative ways to, just as they said, pair it with other services to be able to have access to it and to have the library that they have.
I feel like what they've really done well is decide that they're going to be where adults go for entertainment. Yeah, and they've kind of captured all the markets. All of the fantasy people that like fantasy shows, they've got all the big fantasy shows. All the people that like reality shows, all the big reality shows are on. See, yep, Spectrum got Disney Plus. They got it on Verizon. They got most of these. They got bundles and stuff to keep their subscriber base up. But I think it's just a big deal that they make sure that they continue this. I feel like this, when they introduced what Disney Plus was going to be, many of the people who I knew talked about Disney Plus were saying, But where's the stuff for me? This is all great movies. I like all these Disney movies and stuff. They're great. But that's for the kids, man. What is it for us? What is it for me? Because I'm the one that's paying for all this stuff. I don't want to be paying for something and it's only Pixar movies on there. Well, I mean, obviously I do, because we got the young Spillman back there that loves to watch the Disney movies, and I do watch them a lot. But when he's not here, I do not watch Disney unless it's a Mandalorian season or something. Um, I will be watching on March the 4th. We did not talk about it this week, but
Yeah, no,
he's coming.
Daredevil.
He's coming. He's
Yes, yes,
coming.
sir. Yes, sir.
So I just, this has just been a really big thing for them. So I'm really intrigued.
Indeed, indeed. So that is going to wrap it up for our section or our segment, if you will, in talking about streaming with our segment known as Stream and Chill. We're going to switch gears to our main topic of talking about film and TV. And we're going to start first with none other than Mr. Shrek here. And in talking about our film and TV talk, starting with Shrek 5. There was a news this past Thursday that our Emerald Ogres would receive an additional addition in their family in the form of actress Zendaya, who would be joining the fifth installment of the animated franchise as the title character's daughter, Felicia, in the new film. While details are still unknown, it is revealed, or say it was revealed by Universal that the film would arrive in theaters next holiday season on December 23rd. So Spillman, and when I say next season, I do not mean 2025, I do mean 2026. So December 23rd, 2026. Spillman, are you excited about more Trek, or Trek, more Shrek, excuse me?
Um, I think I am. I do feel like, obviously, I've always said that this is a very lazy writing tactic to start including,
Extra
characters,
family, yeah,
children.
yeah.
Once you start getting to, I wonder what their kid would be doing. I'm like, I don't
Well, the
have
kids
no
were,
idea.
if memory
See,
serves, the kids were in the second film. I mean, they were younger, but they were in the film, if memory serves. But
how long
yes,
ago did that
continue.
movie come out, Brandon?
Oh wow, I'll give you that.
It was
I'll
20
give you that.
years at least. So
I'll give you
to
that.
like, I'm not going to use this. We're going to, because this is the same things we were saying about that Ghostbusters franchise and all kinds of other stuff that started 20, 30, 40 years after it came out. It's like, sure, we're going to talk about the fact that you had a kid at some time, but like, with this, it's a little bit less bad because Shrek was always in this little girl's life, but oftentimes they'll be like, oh, you had a kid that you didn't know about. And even though you were the hero of this, now we have to investigate why you were not taking care of your child. And I don't want to see that. That's lazy writing to me. I feel like that's very lazy writing. Obviously, Zendaya is a superstar, and this is just her picking up another one of those checks. So her family could be like a Fiona Jr. I don't know what her name is going to be in the movie, but Fiona Jr. come over here. Like, did you see that clip of her with Tom Holland at
Oh,
her
you, you're
with her
saying you're saying
family?
Zendaya's character's name is going to be Felicia. That's what I was saying when I was describing it.
Okay, cool. Felicia, sure, sure. Whatever her name is going to be. This is obviously a Zendaya vehicle, not really a Shrek vehicle. I feel like they was like, we need to put out a movie for Christmas. DreamWorks. I think this might be Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers said we're gonna make some money in Christmas. That's what they said. Who owns DreamWorks, ladies and gentlemen? Give me 1 second while
Well,
I
I'll give
look
you a
this up.
second while you pull that up. I'll say this is when we're talking about Shrek. I'm glad you brought up the fact that it's been a while since the last film came out. But with that said, it, when we're talking about Shrek, there's always, however way you may feel about the sequel or sequels, I should say, that we've had. Because if memory serves, I believe we've had two. I want to say we've had two sequels.
It's been like four. This is the fifth one.
Oh, that's right. What am I tripping? Just said fifth installment. See,
It's a
see
lot
how
of
long it's
movies.
been,
That's what I'm saying,
folks.
ladies and gentlemen.
See how
It's been
long it's
so
been,
long.
folks.
You think it's
See how
only been
long it's
two, but then
been.
you look back and you're like,
Yeah,
dang, it's this
yeah.
many of these?
Just said fifth installment, duh. But yeah, in terms of where the franchise is. Um, I feel like we've had such a hiatus because of the fact that by the end of it, now that I'm putting it back together in terms of those four films, that I enjoyed the first one, but incrementally as we got from two to four, I felt like we were starting to get diminishing returns because there was something fresh about the first film in terms of how it played on a lot of tropes when we're talking about, fairy tales and fantasy and all those things. But I feel like it started to get stale as we progressed through the sequels because it felt like they were trying to rely upon prior, jokes and things that they had established before. Where, don't get me wrong, when you're doing a sequel, you still don't want to alienate your audience, but you still want to provide things that are fresh. And I know that that's a tricky proposition to have when you're talking about a film that is that's funny, that's a comedy, because a lot of times you can fall into the trap of saying, "Oh, well, they enjoyed this the first time. They found this funny the first time. Maybe, if we revisit it again, they'll find it funny again." And then that's not something that you can. Comedy is weird that way, where you have to kind of strike that balance of not only having, and I mean, it is a case in sequels in general, but especially with comedies, I feel like you can kind of get away with it in other genres, but in comedies it's harder to be able to strike that balance of what came before while also providing something that's fresh, because I feel like a lot of that humor is going to come from fresh things. I feel like every once in a while you might be able to utilize, what is it, an ongoing gag maybe that may have been established in another installment, and then try to utilize that. But you can't rely on it completely. Most of what you have in terms of that humor has to be fresh. So uh let me see if we have your back. Were you able to find out in that time?
So yeah, they're universal. So
Yeah.
definitely the also ran of these universals pretty much also ran at this point. It's not bad. Obviously they make a lot of money, but they're trying to claw. They don't have a big earner like the Marvel universe or something that prints money every year. So I
Yeah.
think they're just trying to get some more money, man. I
Yeah.
bet they probably should have put this out this year if they're gonna be announcing it this year because it's only March. But I get that, obviously the Shrek movies have
That
to be
animation
animated.
takes time, man. That animation
I
takes
mean,
time.
they got AI computers now that can do all kinds of stuff. I don't believe that it takes time no more.
But I also
I'm
say
just
this, another reason why I say I understand that it's taking another year. If memory serves, a lot of these Shrek films, well, versus maybe their counterparts that are normally shorter, that are like maybe a hour 20, hour and 30. If
hmm
memory serves, a lot of these Shrek films have not been short films. Like, they've been like 2-hour films, if memory serves, on those installments. So if it's going to be that long, and you're, because it seems like they've touched up some of the animation even in the teaser that they showed, that's going to take some time to be able to kind of revamp all of that stuff. And then they do a lot of times, even in the prior installments, they've done some pretty ambitious things in terms of what they've done, in terms of different sequences within those films. So I'm sure that they're trying to up the ante with this next film, especially with us joking about how long it's been since we had the last installment. I'm sure that they're really
They
trying to
had the
make a
Puss in
concerted
Boots
effort.
movie though a couple of
Yeah.
years ago. They had Puss in Boots, but that was
Eh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, again, like you said, it's not funny anymore. You could do something so many times, it's just not funny no more.
Yeah.
But these are family movies, and it's little kids made every day, and I feel like that's part of what keeps this franchise going. Is that they're like, you may be bored of this, but little Mike's not. Little Mike want to see the Green Man with his family
Yeah.
scaring people. Mike
Yeah.
Mike would love
And
to see
I'll
that.
also say this, when it comes to Shrek, and you can appreciate this with, just as you said, of taking, your son to movies. I feel like Shrek is one of those films that you can still take your kids to see, but they have enough stuff in there for adults that you can appreciate.
for
I even
sure.
remember even in the earlier installments, they had a lot of stuff. I'm like, did they really just put that in this kids film, this quote unquote,
Yeah, because we
kids
was old
film?
enough to know what they was talking about by the time Shrek came
Yeah,
out, because we
like
was like in high school.
in
We was
some
like,
of those installments,
whoa,
I was like,
there's the
whoa, that's a little
innuendos.
risky there. That's pretty adult,
Yeah.
but of course, for a kid, it's going over their head. But like you heard parents, adults, everybody laughing at some of those jokes because it was for them. A
It's
lot of
funny you
times,
say that.
but
It's
no,
funny
because
you say that.
I was gonna say a lot of times, and you can appreciate this, just like you were saying, when you're watching, those animated projects with your kids. A lot of times, you kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're great for kids, but you have to kind of suffer through them because you're trying to enjoy it for the sake of your kids that are watching it. But it's always great to have something where yeah, your kid, the kids may be dragging you to see it, but there's enough in there for you where it doesn't feel like you're suffering through the film. So,
I
um,
definitely agree with that. I actually, ladies and gentlemen, I was look with me and young Spillman went to the movies yesterday, and we went to the Alamo Draft House here in Northeast DC, and we almost went to see Shrek because Shrek was back in the movies, but we went to see a new movie
yeah,
because
because it's an anniversary. It's an
it's an
anniversary.
anniversary. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's been
jeez.
25 years, I
Ah,
guess,
yeah,
since that one.
25, yeah. Jeez.
So my son and I went to see Dog Man instead because that's a new movie, and not,
Sure. Of
as a
course.
dad,
Of
this
course.
is the math that dads
Of
do. I
course.
said, I'm not paying for something we can go home and stream on TV. We're gonna see this new movie that neither of us have seen. I've seen Shrek, you've seen Shrek, I watched Shrek with you already. So definitely, but excited to see what they do with this, but who knows?
For sure, for sure. So finally, the moment of truth. We're going to dive into. We're going to try to briefly, succinctly dive into some of the nominees when it comes to the Oscars that is happening later on today. Let me see if I can get this up for you guys. Um, but yes, it is airing on ABC later on this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Not only on ABC, as I just mentioned, but across other outlets worldwide, internationally. As I mentioned just a moment ago, what we're going to do here, and I already discussed this. I know we were talking about this, Millman, is that I just want to dive into who we feel will be winners tonight in some of the said categories. We're going to skip a couple of them, that being some of our short film categories as well as our international ones. So let me share directly from our our page for the Academy. So for the Academy that we have for the Academy Awards, let me see if I can get this up here for you all. And we're going to dive into our nominees. So let me know if you can see this, Spills. See if I can get this up for
We
us.
see it, ladies and gentlemen.
Perfect, perfect. So just going down the list, we have actor in a leading role: Adrian Brody, The Brutalist; Timothy Chalamet, A Complete Unknown; Coleman Domingo, Sing Sing; Ray Fiennes for Conclave; and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Who you got?
Um, I guess we're gonna go with Sebastian Stain because
Okay.
he won the Golden Globe, so I'll go with him.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. When we're looking at the list that we have here, I love the pick for Sebastian Stan. I'm actually going to go with Adrian Brody. The only film that's not on this list that I'm still planning on trying to check out even before the award show, because I've tried to use this week to catch up on the nominees. That is the only film listed here that I have not seen. And out of the nominees, at least from the films, out of the remaining films that I have seen, Adrian Brody is incredible in that role in The Brutalist. While Sebastian Stan does an admirable job in terms of what is required of Brody for that character in The Brutalist, it's incredible. So like I have him winning that sit role. And when we're talking about history related um, projects, not to say that we're not talking about history when we're saying The Apprentice, but I mean at like period pieces where we are diving further into the past. The Academy loves those types of projects, and especially
Hmm.
when they're terrific performances in those types of projects. So that's what I have. Actor in a supporting role, we have, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. We have Yura Borzov in Honora. We have Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown. Guy Pearce in The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. Who you got?
Um, let's go Kieran Culkin. Everybody loves him. He's a darling right now. I feel like this is the chance for him to finally get that piece of metal that will separate him from his brother, because we all know him as Macaulay's brother. Once he gets that little bit of once he gets something like an Oscar, I feel like it'll be like, oh no,
No, I hear you.
Oscar.
So I
Yeah.
would say when we're talking about Culkin, Culkin is just as you said, he is a an impressive actor. He's been in other things, and I feel like even in the other things, even prior to this project, people have started to recognize his talents as an actor. So I don't think that him him not winning this category is going to make or break him. I do feel like he'll be back in other times within his career to be able to win an Oscar, because I feel like he is that talented as a performer to do so. But when we're talking about the performances overall and what was encompassed within those characters, and you believing those characters, Jeremy Strong is outstanding in The Apprentice, of playing that real life late figure from that project. So I'm gonna have to go with Jeremy Strong in this case, because that character is just so despicable, and it's crazy to believe that it's a real life person that he is portraying in The Apprentice. But uh, yeah, like to know what it takes for that character not only be to understand how that character is, to make that character charismatic but still make them despicable as a as a person. That is an incredible feat to be able to accomplish. So I have Jeremy Strong winning for that role. Actress in the leading role, you probably already know I'm going with this, but I'm gonna punt it over to you. We have Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. We have Carla Sofia Gascon for Amelia Perez. Mikey, or yeah, Mikey Madison for Nora. Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here.
Uh, For this one, I feel like Amelia Perez, because that's been the darling right now. I feel like that may be, but she's had some bad press and the bad stuff come out of her in the news, so that may did it. So I feel like Amelia Perez, Carla Sofia Gasson is the choice for me. But I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Demi Moore or Cynthia Evero came out with it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm actually going to pick my choice, not only because I've seen the film, but I'm going to second what you talked about before when we're talking about just the how the story has gone. People love a great story and the momentum that this said performer has had, and I'm going to go with Demi Moore. She was outstanding in that role. I'm rooting for a horror film, because it is a horror film through and through, if we're talking about a body horror related film. But also for the fact that I feel like people are, in the same way you were talking about Calkin there, I feel like they are rooting for Demi Moore with that comeback. And I feel like this is just going to cement it, even with all the other wins that she's had thus far this award season. So all right, going into actress in a supporting role, we have Monica Barbero for A Complete Unknown, Adriana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Zaldana for Amelia Perez. Who you have?
Um, I feel like this one will be tricky, and they'll give it to Ariana Grande so that Wicked actually gets some
Some love.
love.
Okay.
Uh, um, so we'll see. Maybe they'll give it to both her and Cynthia. That would be amazing, but that's probably not going to happen. They never do that. They never ever do that. Um, so I think it'll be that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's the only way
So,
I could go.
in looking at this list, I'm actually this is I'll give you that it is a tricky one because you do have great performances. Whether we're talking about Ariana for Wicked, whether we're talking about Felicity for Brutalist, I mean that's fresh in my head because I had watched that yesterday. I had watched Conclave earlier in the week, and Isabella is great in it too. So this one is a little tricky, but if I really had to kind of be forced to select an option, I would have to agree with you because I know that when we're talking about storylines and just stories just in general of how the journeys of certain performers, in the same way that we talked about with Calkins, same way we talked about with Demi, I feel like that may happen with Ariana, excuse me, here. So, switching on to animated feature film. Let me see if I can press this over a bit. Okay. So, we have Flow, we have Inside Out, we have Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. What you got? I don't know if you heard
I'm
me.
gonna
Did you
say
hear me?
flow. I'm gonna
Oh,
say
okay.
flow. I was trying to think, ladies and gentlemen. I would say
Gotcha.
flow.
Apologies.
I feel like flow is the most of these options that I've seen. That was the kind of thing that the Academy likes to do. Inside Out 2, while it was probably, I mean, it was an okay movie, but they don't give those big studio animated feature films very much love often. Just like they don't do the big blockbusters in the Oscars anymore. So I feel like because Flow was a little bit more avant-garde, I think that that's what they'll go with.
Okay. I'm actually gonna go with. I feel I like the pick for Flow, but I do feel like the Wild Robot is going to win in this case. I enjoyed it, a great deal, and I feel like when we're talking about that story that it tells, it is a story when we're talking about prior nominees that gets a lot of love when we're talking about the Oscars. But I mean, it's a great film on top of all of that. So. I do have the Wild Robot winning. In that case, we want to skip forward past short film and go into cinematography. We have The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. Which one you have?
Let's go with Nosferatu. Maybe it would have been Dune 2 because Dune 2 has great scenes, but again, that's a sequel that generally do not give sequels any love in these kind of situations. I think Nosferatu is going to get it.
Okay, all right. Well, this is interesting because I just saw this film yesterday. I just saw The Brutalist yesterday, and so it's fresh in my mind. And I wouldn't have even thought of it otherwise because of it. It does have incredible cinematography in it. So, but if we're talking about, and maybe this is just me being biased, if we're talking about being able to establish not only a period of time but also establish the type of genre that you're in and effectively do that, I'll have to also go with Nosferatu. So I have Nosferatu winning there too. Um, okay, costume design. We have Complete Unknown, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked.
I would dare say this is going to Wicked. Obviously Nosferatu and Gladiator were great period pieces, as was Complete Unknown, but it's the Wicked Witch of the West. It's the Wizard of Oz reimagined, and it's readapting a stage play, and they
Yes.
really captured the characters. So I just feel like it's kind of this is a shoe in for Wicked.
we're agreed on this. Like I would like Nosferatu to win, but I feel in terms of these nominations that we're seeing for Wicked, I feel like they're going to clean up when it deals with a lot of these categories, when it deals with the artistry that you have involved outside of the performances. So I definitely in this case have Wicked winning in this case. If Wicked was not in this category, I feel like Nosferatu would have been a shoe in. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Wicked. All right, directing. We have Honora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, and The Substance.
Um, I I feel like this is Amelia Perez. It's been kind of the darling this year. I feel like this is the movie to beat. So I feel like I'm just kind of using
Okay,
my tea leaves, but I just feel like it's
gotcha.
going to be Amelia
Okay.
Perez.
Okay, Maria, I understand that. I know a lot of times that momentum can play a role in people assuming that that would be the winner. In this case, I'm going to give it to The Substance, and the reason being is that when we're talking about The Substance, again, I can go into nauseum about the fact that I am a horror fan, but to be able to effectively do a horror film in such a way that even folks that are not necessarily the fan base that you would have for a film like this are still rallying behind it. To be able to have the performances that you have in this film, to be able to also be a female filmmaker in that regard in terms of making making this film. I love it when we have filmmakers that are not like the typical perception that people have. So whether we're talking about filmmakers who are minorities, women, any type of diversity in that same regard. Substance is like was one of my favorite films this year, so I'm gonna have to give it to The Substance. So I'm gonna give it to, and I apologize if I'm butchering the name here, but Coralie, far as yet. Um, but again, I'm probably butchering it. I apologize if I am butchering it, but we will move on. Going into documentary feature film, we have. Well, actually, you know what? We're going to skip past documentaries, but we're going to go into film editing. We have Honora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez, and Wicked. Who do you have?
Shooting from the hip, I'm going Conclave just because that feels right. I feel like the rest of these will kind of stand. I feel like it's going to be something like that where they give Conclave some love because I've seen it a bunch of times, but I don't see any of these other categories where they're going to win against other people. So they're going to give it to them here because don't nobody know who the film editors are in movies. How do you feel?
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with what you feel about editors. I definitely don't feel that way when it comes to
I'm
editors
not
because
talking
we have
about
some.
you, Brandon. You are in the life. I'm talking about just the regular people.
But we have, yeah, we have some outstanding directors on out there. Shout out to good friend John Ottman, who was editor on those Bryan Singer films, as well Bryan Singer X-Men films, as well as on The Usual Suspects. But I digress. Going into film editing, I'm gonna have to give the nod to let me see here. We have, like I said, I saw The Brutalist recently. I've also seen Conclave and Wicked. I'm gonna actually go with Conclave in this regard because in
Ladies and
terms of,
gentlemen, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He was like, I don't know about that Spillman, and went with the one I went with.
but I have a reason. I have a reason. And watching the film and talking about what its subject matter of being able to select a pope and how it is executed in a way where if it was in anyone else's hands, it would be a boring film. But because of the way that it's edited, it keeps you entranced in that process that they have at the center of the story of this film. So uh, in anyone else's hands, as I said, it would have been really boring. But it is a really interesting film, and also in terms of how they execute doing that story of what's at the center of it. So I would definitely give it to Conclave in that regard. Um, Let's see. I think we'll do. I'll tell you what. We'll do makeup and hairstyling and music, and we'll wrap up. Going into makeup and hairstyling, we have a different man. We have Amelia Perez, Nosferatu, The Substance, and Wicked. Who do you have?
Wicked. I got the they made them look like people that have not been alive for dozens of years. So I feel like what they did with Wicked, it's one of the big films of the year, and it's really for its costumes and makeup and stuff. So I feel like that's definitely a shoe in for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna go with. I get the reason for you picking what you picked, but I'm gonna give it to The Substance. And the reason being is because of what they were able to accomplish in terms of showing the that progression of that character and using the substance and being able to distinguish that deterioration of that character using makeup, using costume and things like that. So yeah, like I'm gonna give it to the substance in that regard because in if that wasn't in that group, I would actually give it to Nosferatu, but I'm gonna go with the substance. All right. So we'll go with original score. Because as I said, we want to just do a brief pick here. So original score, we have The Brutalist, we have Conclave, Amelia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. I think that this is a shoe in, but go ahead.
Um, I don't actually know. Can you put it up on the screen for me, or is it not on the
Oh
screen?
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Let me
yeah, I
do that.
can't see what this is.
Let's see if I
Let's
can
hold
get
on. There's we go.
this back up for you. So let's see. It should be coming up now. So there we go. So the Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez, Wicked, and the Wild Robot for music original score.
We're gonna have to go with Wicked. This was the one that was actually a musical. I
We
feel
agree.
like
Yeah, yeah. It seems
how
like a
you make
no-brainer to
a
me.
movie with songs and then you lose the songs
Right.
category.
Right.
Like
I
how
feel
that
like that.
happened?
Yeah, I feel like that's a no-brainer. There are a couple other categories that we'll get into, but I wanted to keep it brief here. So let us know if there are any folks that you feel in some of the categories that either you perceive as believe is going to win, or you hope will win. I feel like sometimes that goes hand in hand, and sometimes like it doesn't go hand in hand. But let us know in the comments. But that is going to do it for us here at Movers and Shakers Unlimited for our weekly show known as This Week in Pop Culture. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Just know that we do a dual stream across YouTube and Facebook. And if you are enjoying us across Facebook, you can help us out with what we have with our digital currency that you can select on our Facebook stream for stars, which you'll see pop up during the stream. So feel free; it helps us keep the lights on, so to speak. But Spillman, with that said, I'm gonna punt it over to you. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We had another great show. My effects are not working right now. Let me make sure I got them. Come on,
Let's
effects.
see.
Come on. It's not you. Let's go. All right, we'll do the two hands for confetti. Maybe we'll get some confetti. There we
There
go.
we
We got
go.
confetti,
There we
ladies and
go. We got
gentlemen.
it. We got it.
And now
Came up.
we got some of this. But okay, we'll do thumbs down because that's what you're doing to me, Apple. You stinky. It's March. So, in March you get a lion or a lamb. I guess today was a lion. We didn't get no fireworks. It wasn't no sunshine and roses. But, check us out, like Brandon said. Make sure you give us your likes and your subs. We also, I believe we have a Patreon. You can check us out there. But
Of
help us
course,
out,
yes.
help us keep the show going. And remember, one game out of second place, ladies and gentlemen. Back to you, Brandon.
Indeed. All right. So again, I want to thank Spillman for always being here for our to co-host with our weekly show here. Despite the busy life that he has, I am not it's not lost on me. Appreciate him being here each week. You can find me at Brandon Troy ENT on X and also Brandon Troy _ENT on IG. with that out of the way, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, folks, and see y'all soon. Peace.
That's the love for you, ladies and gentlemen. The love for